name is Ed Johnson. You know, I grew up here in Little Rock. Wasn't born here, but I was raised here. Been here since I was 2 years old. I'm 74 years old, so I've been here most all my life. Graduated from high school here, Horace Mann, class of 68. Oh, greatest class ever came out. And it's been 15 months in Vietnam, and a year in the hospital. Got 2 Purple Hearts out of Vietnam.
Okay, tell me what you remember from 1957.
Well, y'all asking me to scrape my brain. 1957.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember about 1957 is I remember seeing the Army trucks coming up and down 14th Street. But I never knew what was happening on the other end of 14th Street because I never even knew Central was down at the end of the street. Before the river went was High Street. So at that time you see the Army men coming up and down 14th Street. All that was going on in the Central, that race riot. The Little Rock Nine was getting in Central. I never even knew all that was happening until about, I'll say 5 or 6 years later when I learned about Little Rock Central. And I was at Booker Junior High, Booker Elementary or middle school, when I learned about Little Rock Central.
So did people say don't go past this point, like in your neighborhood, like was there?
No, Mom and Dad said, don't be over there or down the street. They don't want you no more than 2 or 3 blocks from the house. At that time, I think I was like about 8 years old, so I could understand what they were talking about.
Okay, so imagine, did you ever imagine going to school with white children during that time, or?
I remember when they came to Horace Mann, they were talking about switching students. I do remember that, and that was in my 10th grade, I think like in the early 60s, I mean like about 65. And they were talking about sending some more black students to Central and bringing some white students on Horace Mann. A lot of the black students elected to go from the 10th grade to Central, and I wasn't one of them. I knew that some good friends of mine, they transferred to Central, and I don't know why I didn't want to go. I guess maybe I didn't know the difference about white and black, or because when I grew up in the cotton fields. On Saturday morning we went to the cotton fields, and the only time you saw white folks was when they was over the cotton fields. So going to school with them, that was kind of a scary thought, switching from Horace Mann going to Central. Now, what made it scary, I don't know. I guess because I was so comfortable at Horace Mann.
Did you ever hear of any incidents or any people talking about the experience at Central? Any stories about the?
I heard about it, and I saw it a couple times, like when Horace Mann played Central in football games. If you looked on one side of the stadium, you see mostly blacks. And on the other side of the stadium, maybe mixed with the few blacks that went to Central and mostly white. Then you probably seen a fight or two going on. I don't know did that have anything to do with the race, or not just white folks didn't like black folks or black folks didn't like white folks. I think we as black folks, we always accepted the white folks a lot quicker than they accepted us.
Okay, so looking at that time, what was the temperature like in the African American community during the 1957? Was there like any energy, or did you hear about people talking about things?
I used to hear my dad talking about Mr. So-and-so and there down in Central, or Mr. So-and-so, and then I don't need you hanging out to the point where when they ride up and down the street, they own 14th Street or stuff like that. Because we live like 3 houses over from where Church's Chicken is sitting right now. And my uncle Levi and there, they own all that. And they always told us about what was going on down the street. But I don't think that I was really just listening to that problem, because I guess I was so into my black world. But as I grew older, I started hearing stories about people saying that they got in fights, they got jumped, or they didn't last more than 1 or 2 years at Central, then they got transferred back to Horace Mann or went to Jones High School. I knew Miss Bates because Miss Bates was always in the community helping the kids out, or when you pass by her house, you know, she would always want you to raking leaves and stuff like that. That's the only way I knew Miss Bates. I didn't know Miss Bates personally, like Miss Daisy this and Miss Daisy that. I just knew because we lived in the neighborhood. She would come down to Thrasher Boys Club a lot, not just hanging around Thrasher Boys Club, but she would always make an appearance because she was in the neighborhood. Her and Miss Gray, I think, was pretty much good friends because Miss Gray was the one who recruited me to go to the Sunset Tigers football program. So that's how I knew Miss Bates. But now as far as all that stuff that went on, Miss Bates drove the cars over Central, took the kids to school every morning. I heard about all that later from the early '60s to now. I don't see the progress other than you're allowed to sit at the counters, because the first time I sit at a counter, this white man was gonna whoop me, and my mama whooped me to keep him from whooping me because the sign said white and colored. I seen all this as I was growing up, and up and down 14th Street going to Central. Most of the white folks stayed around Central anyway at that time. So you asking what do I think the progress of our race, the progress of the school system. I don't, in my personal opinion, I've seen a lot of the schools get wiped out in the black neighborhood. And I'm not sure it has something to do with race or not, but I see the schools that get knocked down, they get renamed something else. It won't be the same black name that the school was, or you knock it down. Let's say Horace Mann got knocked down to a middle school, and by me being a Horace Mann graduate, I thought Horace Mann was the greatest school around. I even thought the environment was greater at Horace Mann than it was at Central, because I hear a lot of people were telling me about how the environment at Central was, where you had to be in a group to really survive. And that means that you get caught in the wrong place and the white kids didn't like you, or there was a race problem. First time my experience was at Sterling Department Store. I drank out of a water fountain. And my mama, this white man was gonna whoop me because I drank out the deal. I didn't look up and see the sign said white and colored. My mama whooped me to keep this man from whooping me. That was my first experience on black and white or the race. That's what that sign meant. White over here and colored over here. I never knew what the black and white color really meant. I don't think I even learned what black and white and the color meant until I first got in the United States Army. That's when you find out that there really was a such thing as, I was called the N word. Didn't even know all that existed until I got up in, let's say, I would say in the 11th grade. That's when you started to find out that there was a lot going on in this world, and that's what that sign meant, color and white. Everything on I would say, west of Martin Luther King going towards Central, the white folks pretty much own all that. Even when you went to the stadium over there, a lot of folks didn't even know that the stadium was named Earl Quigley. They always thought the stadium was Central High Stadium. And today, people don't even know it's called Earl Quigley.
I've heard that for years.
Well, when they built Booker, Booker was supposed to have been the new Horace Mann for the track, because Horace Mann didn't have a stadium. Horace Mann didn't have nothing but the high school. And if you look at the property over in that area, I don't know was that room or not, but that deal across the street from Horace Mann down and turned into a megaplex soccer field. Horace Mann had to use Booker Field a lot for the track meets. And every now and then we had to practice over there on the football program. But when we played at Central, it was like we was out our elements, because we was like a well, I said third class football program, playing against Central, playing against Hall, playing against Catholic. We didn't have what they had as far as equipment. We didn't have what they had as far as things that made us a better football program. That's when I found out that there was such thing as difference in the schools, difference in the books. When you go into school, you never thought about why I got a book that don't read the same as the books over Central anywhere else. You just thought, enjoy yourself at Horace Mann, because that was my most enjoyable years in school. I was a young man. I was 12 years old, I think, Dave, when I started venturing downtown, because the GM Theater was down there on 9th Street, the Rialto was downtown, and the Central Theater, the Center Theater was downtown. All of those theaters where you had to sit upstairs, or you couldn't go down there where the white kids was. And then the one on Main Street was pretty much the same thing. That, you get caught on Main Street and late at night, you probably had a problem getting back down south.
Okay. Do you have any memories of the schools being shut down in '57?
Yeah, I do. That summer was good because I played in my yard that whole summer, didn't have to go to school. That whole fall, didn't have to go to school. I think I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. And we had to do that was just read our books at home, but you get to play out there in the dirt all day, get to play in the yard all day, didn't have to worry about getting up in the morning. I think that was a fun time.
Did any of your friends go to J.C. Cook or leave the state or anything to finish school?
I know a lot of my friends, I can say I knew some friends of mine that I grew up with and still probably got close contact with now. I know they transferred to Central, and that's where they graduated at. I'm not aware of any of them left the state and went anywhere else, went to school. I know a couple of them transferred to Jones High School because I know that the female I was going to marry, well, not married, one of the girlfriends, and we always had dreams someday later on marrying, but I knew she was at Jones High School, and she transferred over there. I don't want to say for sure, but I think I was in maybe the 10th grade over Horace Mann when he came through Little Rock, and our teachers told us about him because we would sit up in class when they told us about he had got killed at Horace Mann. I wasn't aware. Let's just say I wouldn't expose that type of life where knowing Dr. King came through. I don't think he made an appearance at Horace Mann. I think when he came through, it was like the NAACP meeting, something like that. And we were told at school that he had come through Little Rock. But other than that, I never met him, but I read a lot of his words, and probably to speak with longevity has its purpose. I pretty much like to live on stuff Dr. King put out. I don't know could I have lived the life Dr. King lived. I'd probably be a dead hero today. But he was the guy that influenced a lot of us to do the things we're doing. He was the guy that pretty much gets in our head when we're preaching to the kids about nonviolence, preaching to the kids about education, preaching to the kids about quality of life. His words carry a whole lot of weight in people's lives. I don't know there's another black leader that we listen to more than him. Even when you read the stuff that he's printed, listen to his speeches, when you're sitting up in class, because the day he got killed, we pretty much thought the world was coming to an end. Even though you had never met the man, but you knew, you've heard his speeches in class and stuff like that. Pride for education probably gonna start with neighborhood schools. Most kids now have been pulled out of their neighborhoods, and there's no neighborhood pride anymore. The only pride they got now is neighborhood colors. And neighborhood colors roll over into neighborhood gangs. What our kids need today more is role models. We need people that let this young man, this young woman know that there's another life other than hanging out in the streets of the clubs. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against clubs. I have nothing against hanging out, but the idea is when you're hanging out, is there a purpose for it? We need role models. We need people that look at the kids that's out there now. We got guys that's in the youth sports field that I'm in that nobody up in the higher echelon looks down at. They don't help them. They don't try to give them the road that they need to go down to recruit kids or put kids in sports. There's a lot of kids out there that are being pushed back, and when they get pushed back, they come back mean. The justice system seems like the only answer to that is locking them up. And I tell my kids, when you go to the zoo, you see that tiger when he's pacing left and right in that 12 by 12 cage. Why you think he's pacing? Because he's pissed off, he's locked up. Well, if he ever get out that cage, he's biting the first thing that get in his way. Well, when the kid get out of prison, he's already mad because you done locked him up all them years, then you let him back out on the street. Then he come back out. He's right now retaliating against the system, and the system done him wrong, so he's doing somebody else wrong. And what we need is understanding to the point where help them get jobs, help them be able to look up their manhood back where they can survive on their own. And the kids is going to school, and he got to get up at 6:30 in the morning and get on the bus. Man, when I was working driving truck every morning, I come out of my house at 6:30. I'm looking left and I'm looking right. That kid come out standing on the corner, they're not afraid of anything. It's dark when they're out there on the corner. And they got to ride the bus for 30 minutes. I take my little grandson to school. It takes me 20, 25 minutes to drive from my house to Southwest to get him in school. So I can understand when the kid busts out of his neighborhood, when he get back it's dark, when he go to bed it's dark, when he get up in the morning time he being busted out again. So he has no neighborhood to be proud of. He has no background to be proud of. The only thing he got to be proud of is the youth football team that he's on, and then he grew up with the memories. And that's my job. That's why I've lasted 51 years, because I believe that every kid out there deserves somebody to give him that direction. And God chose me to be the one to do it with the Sunset Tigers. Not all the other teams. I mean, you got good teams out in this town. You got the Mighty Vikings. You got the Wolfpack. You got the Seahawks. You got the Cardinals. All them teams out there, the Saints, they're doing the same thing, but they need help. Help means give them something to make that kid being proud of his neighborhood. Not want to wear the colors of a game. You want to wear colors of his football team or his basketball team. We should learn that forced schooling don't work. It makes kids meaner, hateful, because they're being forced to go to schools that they don't want to go to. That's being pushed on them, and when that's being pushed on them, they fight back in school. They cause disruption in school. Now you got to kick him out of here and put him in an alternative school because he don't want to be at that school. If anything we need to learn from 1957 is that's not working. Forced schooling is not working. You know, a lot of people going to tell you, oh, it looks good, it's working, it's this, that. No, it's not. It's covered up. In my opinion, it's covered up.
My name is Judy Freeman Washington Green. I was one of the unfortunate students who was displaced by the 1957-1959 Central High School desegregation crisis when the schools were closed for 1 year. The 1 year lost from regular high school did deprive us from such things as senior prom, a class ring, yearbook, and other activities that are enjoyed by high school seniors. Governor Orville Faubus had ordered the Little Rock Senior High Schools, Horace Mann and Central, closed the fall semester of 1958 because 9 of my classmates, now known as the Little Rock Nine, attempted to integrate Central. After the schools were closed the fall semester of 1958, my family made plans to send me to Detroit, Michigan, where I had relatives. In January of 1959, to finish out the second semester, the word was out that seniors from Mann and Central in Little Rock, Arkansas, would not be allowed to enter many out-of-state schools. Certain states even required students to be at least 1 year residents in order to attend schools in their state. In January of 1959, Philander Smith College in Little Rock offered Mann High School seniors an opportunity to complete their high school units at that institution. After being screened and passing the regular college entrance examination, 6 of us entered Philander Smith College under these unusual circumstances. We were required to take regular college courses, but they were applied to our high school units to make up the units we lacked in order to graduate from high school. All hours earned over what was required to complete the high school units was applied to our freshman years in college. I attended Philander during the 1958, 1959, and 1959-1960 school years. I am thankful for an institution such as Philander Smith College.
In January of '59, Philander Smith College. Well, during that time also, Dr. T.J. Rainey, who was an associate of my doctor, who was B.T. Cobb, my primary care physician, Dr. Rainey he built a school for the Central High School students, for the Central High School seniors to go. And back at that time, in January of 1958, 59, I think, Philander Smith College offered an opportunity for Horace Mann seniors to complete their high school education there. And we had to take regular high school courses. Regular college courses. We had to take the regular college entrance exams. We had to take regular college courses, and they were applied. The units that we needed to finish our high school education, those hours went towards our high school graduation. The rest of the units, the hours went towards our freshman year in college. And I attended Philander during the 58, 59, 59, 60 school year. I got married in 59, and which interrupted my college. In 1960, I started raising a family. So I returned to Philander in 1977, where I received a bachelor's degree in business administration with a minor in business education. And during that time, I finished real quick because during that time I was taking anywhere from 6 to 18 hours a semester because I was going to school at night and on weekends too. We had certain classes on weekends. But then I'm really thankful for Philander, for the opportunity that they offered us, because most of my classmates a lot of them went to J.C. Cook in Wrightsville or Sweet Home or Wrightsville. They offered an opportunity for Horace Mann students to come there, for the seniors to come there and finish. And that's where a lot of our classmates went. I went one day. And one thing is because they didn't offer a commercial class, which was shorthand, typing, and business, So I did not go back, but as I say, I went to Detroit, but I didn't stay very long because the schools were closed during that time. But that's about it. When Philander offered us an opportunity to come there to finish our classes, I went and finished there. And from there I went, it was a success story. Okay, I'll say that.
During the process of integration, what were your initial feelings?
Well, I was disappointed because I was a senior and I was slated to be captain of the cheerleaders. I was on the cheerleading squad of the Bearcats. And I was slated to be the captain of the cheerleading team during my senior year. So I was disappointed for that reason. And being out of school, not having an education, that was important to us then. Things were different back then than they are now. We're living in a different age now. We're living in a different era. The world is just not like it was when we were in school. And school was important to us right back then. And as a matter of fact, you had to go to school because your parents made you go to school too. 9 of my classmates went to Central and they had a hard time. And, naturally we felt for them. Many of our parents did not want us to go to Central. That's why there were only 9 of us who's the students plus their parents who were brave enough to go to Central. And I admire those 9 classmates of mine. But most of our parents worked under white employment. We're talking about the era of segregation. So most of our parents worked for white people. And they had fear of losing their jobs if they let their kids go to Central. So, but the energy was high. And we were very supportive of the 9 students who did attempt to go. I remember Reverend Harry Bass was very instrumental in that era. Reverend R.K. Young, R.K. Young was an AME minister. I'm an AME. But several of our ministers were involved in that. And they met with Daisy Bates and the students on numerous occasions. And they were there in the forefront all the time. The state prevented integration because Little Rock School District had no choice. The governor of the state, Orville E. Faubus, he closed the schools down. President Eisenhower had to send National Guard troops in here to protect the 9 students who went to Central. But it was chaos. It was chaos. I can tell you now, when we went to Philander, we went to Philander the year after. Philander opened their doors the year after. And now, like as I said, a lot of my classmates went to J.C. Cook. Some of our classmates went in the military. And because a lot of the other states didn't want Arkansas students coming there because of the crisis that we were having here. But I think the majority of our students stayed out for a whole year and came back, and they graduated with the class in the next year. After we still consider them as part of our class because we were called the class that should have been, but the state labeled us the lost class. So that's what we go along with, the lost class. But during the time when we were at Philander, during that next fall, we were trying to integrate the lunch counters downtown. Woolworths, Sterling's, those especially Woolworths. We were trying to integrate the lunch counters because of all of this disaster was going on, all the desegregation and all this. We were just trying to integrate everything. And I do remember that we had a lot of African students who went to school with us at Philander. And during the lunchtime, we would go down to McClellan, which was on Main Street. And we would take some of the African students with us. They thought the African students were better than the Black students. Yes. And we would send the African students in there to the lunch counter and they would let them sit down. And then when we would go in there, they would not serve us. So we demonstrated at McClellan. At the lunch counter down there. And it's been a long journey. I can tell you that. It's been a long journey. We only had 2 movies that we could go to. The Gym Theater was, of course, it was a Black movie. The New Theater was up on Wright Avenue. That was integrated. We could go to the New Theater. It was called the New, NEW. We had to sit in the balcony. And in North Little Rock, they had the Rialto Theater. We had to sit in the balcony at the Rialto Theater. So we've been through a lot, but it made us strong, some of us. But I was a strong woman and I was determined. I was determined to get my education. And I fought hard to stay in school. I worked during the summer, and but I fought hard to go to school, stay in school. And I think the year that the schools were out, the parents were probably having headaches, having kids at home all day, every day. Well, I think number one, these young people don't have a clue what we went through. What we had to go through, the opportunities that they have now, they take it for granted. They have no idea the struggles that we had to even just get a simple education, or to, like you can go into the restaurants or the fast food stores or anywhere. We weren't even allowed to work at a store like McDonald's. We weren't, you didn't see any blacks in fast food stores. You didn't see any of us in the restaurants either. And now when you go in the restaurants, sometimes they don't want to be bothered. They act like they, that we owe them something. When you go in the restaurants, or not everybody, but generally, I've noticed that I said they don't want their job. There was a time when we couldn't get the job that they have, even making minimum wage. We were glad to get the job. I remember when I was in high school, I babysit for a couple over in Levy. She was a nurse and he was a trucker. And I used to babysit in the summer, during the summer months. I worked so that I couldn't wait to get my first paycheck and get my first little RCA Victrola. You play your records on. That was something that, that was just something that wasn't just given.
Mm-hmm.
We worked hard. And a lot of us worked during the summer months. I know that Daisy was very popular, and we knew that a lot of dignitaries came in here. Like I said, I was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I was still a high school student, so I was not invited into those meetings, but I was aware. As a matter of fact, Daisy Bates lived in my neighborhood. And as a matter of fact, her home is 3 blocks from me right now, from my home. Where I'm living now, used to be a white neighborhood. Daisy's home is the same home that they made it a museum down there, and it's still down there, the house that she lived in, and it's just right down the street from me. But yes, I do remember, because it was news. It was news when these dignitaries came in here. It was news. Everybody knew about it, and Mrs. Bates was very popular. Her husband was president of NAACP at the time. I think we're in a much better place than what we were, but we got a long ways to go still. I think there's still, and one of the things too, I think in the schools, especially the elementary schools, I think one of the things is we have equal education now. Some of the schools, I think in the black schools that they still probably have some of the older books, and materials that then they have in the other. When they went to Dunbar, I went to Dunbar High School. Dunbar at the time, Dunbar was a 7th through 12th grade. I went to Dunbar in the 7th grade, and I think it was 1956 when they built Horace Mann. And I was in the 9th grade when they built Horace Mann. That was the senior high school for blacks. Our class was the first class to graduate from Dunbar when it became a junior high school. And then the next year, the second year that Horace Mann was there, we went on over to Horace Mann in the 10th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Yeah, well, I went to Old South End School, where the Thrasher Boys Club is now. South End School, and there are a bunch of little white buildings. There was one real long building. That was the 6th grade, the 2 6th grade teachers. I never remember. Sarah Rice and Minnie B. Hicks were the teachers in the 6th grade. They taught the 6th grade. Well, the rest of the classes we had, different classes, first, second, third grade. There were little small white buildings. It's right down there where Crumpus Park is now. And when they built Booker T. Washington, we moved from those little buildings over to Booker T. Washington School over on Main Street. Well, what they did is William Thrasher, Mr. Thrasher, who grew up in our neighborhood, when they tore down all the buildings, he asked them to keep the one long building that was a sixth grade class. And he turned it into a South End Boys Club. It was a South End Boys Club. Thrasher, he started the South End Boys Club, as a matter of fact. So after he died, he had been trying to get a new building for us out here for years for the kids in the South End. And after he died, they finally built a new building, and they named it after him, William Thrasher, which is still in existence. Yes, all my kids. I grew up out there at that boys club. When he had the Thrasher Boys Club down there, it was for all the kids in the South End. And they had something going on every day, every evening after school. You had somewhere to go. On Friday nights, every Friday night, they had movies outdoors. And during the summer months, outdoors, they had movies outside on Friday nights. Halloween, they had Halloween parties. They, bob the apples, doing everything. Mr. Thrasher did a lot for the kids in the South End. When we went to Philander, we were called the transition class. The 6 of us, I sent you pictures of it.
Okay.
We were called the yearbook, the 59 yearbook, they had all of our pictures in there, and they called us the transition class. I don't know where they got that name from, but we transitioned from high school to college before we were ready to go to college, a year before we were supposed to be in college. And there was this young boy, his name was Roger Allen. And his father taught math at J.C. Cook, the school where some of my classmates went. He was 13 years old. He was a little genius. And they allowed him to go to Philander. He came to Philander with us. They allowed him in there. And he was smart. He was a smart young man. I sent you a picture of him also with his credentials. Because he really had some heavy credentials to be 13 years old. He acted childish. I remember Miss Torrance, when we were in our English class, he used to throw spitballs across the classroom. And Miss Torrance was our English teacher. She was very proper. And she says, young man, you're in college now. You have to act like college kids. But that's a legacy. There was a lot of my classmates, they didn't even know about it. They wanted to know, well, how did you all find out about it? And I don't remember how we found out about it. I don't know if the school reached out to us or if they reached out to the school or what, but I know there were 6 of us that went to Philander and finished our high school. Well, naturally, I was concerned about my classmates going in there because every day they were on the news showing how, and it really wasn't the white students, but it was the grown people who were causing all the problems. It wasn't the students, it was the adults, parents and adults. I mean, they were throwing things at them and, they would, well, I'll have to let you talk to some of the Little Rock Nine to let you know what they went through with. They went through a lot. And we saw every bit of it on the news. So we were concerned about them. But what can we do? We were kids too. But when they were trying to get Horace Mann students to come, they had made an offer to several students. I don't remember how they approached us, but a lot of us were eligible to go, but the parents were afraid for the students to go. Our parents just were afraid. They were afraid for their kids to go. Plus, they were worried about losing their jobs. A lot of them were worried about losing their jobs. I found out later. A lot of the parents thought that they would lose because we were living in a segregated era.
integration began, we knew about the school closing, but we didn't know exactly what day that we were going to actually have to go over. There was rumors and propaganda and all type of things happening already before we got to the school. People were found dead. People were found beat up just on a black and white issue. One of the things that me and 5 other guys decided to do was to graduate high school and go in the military. We decided to do that because it seems to be no other course of action to take, and the military seemed to be the safest place for us, and we could travel and get paid. That was the key thing. Myself, a guy named John Moran, Joseph Jones, Robert Lloyd, Jerry Levison, and we all went into the Air Force. Some guys went into the Army, but most of the guys that graduated in the early 70s went to the military, and that was one of the reasons why. We all had we had big meetings, and we would pick a room that would be empty, and we would just meet within ourselves. And we played on the teams, on the basketball teams with the white guy, but we didn't play our best. We didn't play our hardest, and I hate that we didn't do that. Had we done that, we probably would have took the team over. But the coaches were firm, and they kept us in line, and they said, you know, we don't want to fight among ourselves. We want to fight the other team. And every time that we went to play somebody, there was almost a fight. There was definitely some talk. There was almost a fight. After going into the military, I went back to the school after graduating and getting enlisted, and talked to my ROTC instructors, and they encouraged me to continue and go on to college in order to get a degree and become an officer. They wanted me not to be a non-commissioned officer, but they wanted me to be a regular officer in the Air Force. So I went on to college, and I got my associate's degree in administrative management, my bachelor's degree in resource management. I got my master's degree in operation management from Fayetteville, and I got 2 postdoctorate degrees, one at Trinity College and Seminary, and I am an ordained minister, and the other one is Grambling State University, dealing with developmental learners. So one of the things that I tried to do on both sides was, I held up my hand one day, and I had 5 things that I like to do. One of the things I wanted to do was to be a mechanic. My dad was already a mechanic, so he taught me what he knew. The other thing I wanted to do was to graduate college. Graduate college, I did that. Another thing that I wanted to do was to join the military. I joined the military. My next career was to become a college professor. I am a college professor. So those are the things that I had lined up now. Now, as a college professor, I've been at Arkansas Baptist for 32 years. And what I teach now is I teach the students how. I teach the students why. I teach the students when. I teach the students where. And I teach the students why. They need to diversify their careers. Because if they don't diversify their careers, they're not going to have a job, and they're not going to know what happened. One of the things that we need to do as a people is to continue to strive and continue to help our brother man. And if we don't help our brother won't help us.
All right, so going back to Blytheville, what year was that the school was integrated?
1970. 1970 was the integration, and they had a graduation class. The graduation class was Harrison High and Blytheville High together. and they both received diploma, but everybody marched together. And the next year was the year that I graduated in '72, and it was just one graduation, Blytheville High School. So I went to high school at Harrison High School, but I graduated from Blytheville High School.
Okay, so Harrison High School was an all-black high school.
Yeah, Harrison High School was an all-black high school, and it was started by a young man named Harrison. Last name was Harrison, and it was there because we couldn't go to the predominantly white school.
Okay, what was that like integrating the first day of school in 1970?
It was like when I was a little kid, I watched my sisters, my cousins, and my brothers walk the streets for equal rights, equal opportunity. And I just said one day, when I grow up, I'm still going to speak on equal opportunity, equal right, segregation. Why are we segregated when in Christ we are always one?
So did y'all hear a lot about what was going on here? Because we look at Blytheville being integrated in 1970, so that was pretty much 23 years after the integration of Little Rock Central High School. Did you hear about the Little Rock Nine? What were your feelings when you heard about what was going on here in '57?
The Little Rock Nine, my mother would change the channel when it came on TV. She said I didn't need to see all that. But every once in a while, she'd fall asleep, and I watch it. I watch the whole thing. I think that's one of the reasons why I live in Little Rock now. I've been in the military. I travel nearly all over the world, only to come back. And we still have some. The people are moving and segregating themselves. And I can say that there may be something for them in the end, but there's nothing for them right now.
What advice, how are we doing 65 years after Central?
Say that again.
How is our generation doing 65 years after Central? How are we
Our
doing?
generation are not trusting each other. We got to learn to trust each other and to take our faults and make them work. One of the things that myself and the other guys who decided to go into the military was that the military was structured. You had to do certain things. You already knew somebody was going to be in your face, and you had to get ready for it. And so we would practice on each other. And we took ROTC in high school. Harrison High School didn't have ROTC, but Blytheville High School did. So we had no problem going, and we all took ROTC. We all marched, and we all wanted to fight.
So,
Not only fight for our education, but to fight for our country. We have to support the mission. The mission is to learn how to live together. I was at the East Porter the other day, sitting in the steam room, and I was the only black in there. At one time, that wasn't allowed. But we had a nice conversation. and we talked about things that was prevalent in the community. Yes, we did. You have to learn, you have to learn, you have to learn how to get along.
All right, we're good.
The book I wrote is called From the Cotton Sack to the Backpack. I would go to the field every day and pray to God to get me out of that field. There was bugs, it was cold, it was nasty, and we had to pick this cotton, but I didn't know we had to pick the cotton in order to put the food on the table. But I realized after a while, I'm 12 years old, and any day that it rained, we went to school. But if it didn't rain, guess what? We didn't go to school. So they have a privilege now to go to school, and the fact that they don't want to go to school, they should have been there when I was there. Your hands had gloves on, but the fingertips in the gloves were worn out, and your fingertips were cold and numb, but you still had to pick that cotton. You had no choice. They would wake you up at dark 30 in the morning, and that was different times. And you would actually get on a truck, drive out to the field, get out your sack, and start on a row. Now they have machines that do that. They call them cotton picking machines. Yeah, and they got combines to pick the beans and all that. But without those machines, we probably would have been still trying to pick cotton.